Hello and welcome to this very special panel on board games brought to you by Dicebreaker. I am Matt from Dicebreaker. If you've not heard of us, we are a website and YouTube channel about board games, tabletop RPGs, and basically anything you can play on a table or sometimes off of it. We are joined today by Alex Lolies, also from the Dicebreaker team. Thank you for joining us, Lolies.
Hello.
And some very special guests from across the world of board games. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. If we'll start with Miklos and Starla, please, first.
Well, I'm Starla.
I'm Mick.
And we are
Our Family Plays Games. Yeah, baby.
And we are in the U.S.
Yeah. Somewhere around there.
Excellent. And where can folks find you? What website or YouTube channel? Or?
We have our YouTube channel, Our Family Plays Games. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
We everywhere.
And if you're in the U.S., check us out. We're in Omaha.
Yep.
Nebraska.
In the middle of America. Really the middle.
Excellent stuff. And moving on, Amy, please.
Hi, I'm Amy Dickinson. I am one half of the Game Shelf. We are a written blog that's been writing from a couple's perspective for about nearly 6 years now. You can find us at the gameshelf.blogspot.com or game_shelf on Twitter.
Awesome. And Kareem?
Hi, my name's Kareem. I'm the Board Game Minimalist, and you can mostly just find me on Twitter at Game Minimalist. And I mostly talk about just trying to get some really good board games into your collection and keep a sort of more modest collection size so you can sort of maximize the value there. But, really interested in board games. Not super long time in the hobby, maybe sort of 4 or 5 years. But it's a lot of fun just kind of trying to find those key games to keep in the collection. So,
Fantastic. And last but not least, we have Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric, and I'm on What's Eric Playing, a board game review and photography site. So most of my reviews are written, and you can find me at what'sericplaying.com or on Instagram at What's Eric Playing or Twitter due to its name limit at What's E Playing. It's a 16-character title, as it turns out. Really, really loved that for me. But yeah, no, I've been in the hobby for about 5 years and mostly specialize in written reviews and photography.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us, first of all. And thank you, the viewers at home, for also joining us. We can't see you, but thank you for being here. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about basically how to get into board games. Maybe you've played Monopoly. There's a good chance you've played Monopoly. Maybe you've played Catan or even Pandemic. But if you're looking to pick up some of the more modern games that are out there that you might not have heard of, that might have just passed you by, or maybe are just hidden gems, we're going to kind of just have a conversation about that and then where you can go in the hobby after that. So the title of this panel, which doesn't really have a title yet, is something along the lines of "There's never been a better time to play board games. Here's why and where you can start."
That's a long title.
It really is.
You should go with the acronym for that one.
How are you going to make a Twitter handle for that one? I want to see.
But at least it's accurate,
Specific is good, though.
We'll dive straight in, really. Let's talk about, I guess, more generally, board games. It will come as a surprise to nobody watching this. Board games, they've been around a while. Monopoly is, over 100 years old, and Senate dates back thousands of years. But arguably, board games right now are really seeing kind of a golden age. They're really booming. There's board game cafes, there's board game shops. They are all over Kickstarter. They're making millions of dollars. So in some ways, it feels like they've never been bigger. So why should folks maybe they've played some of those older games. They might have a dusty copy of Trivial Pursuit or Scrabble. Why should they be getting back into modern board games right now?
Well, partially, I think it's because your old copy of Trivial Pursuit's out of date now, right? I think I saw one that was asking which of these actors hadn't been Batman, and Ben Affleck was on the list. So, at the very least, you gotta get a new copy of Trivial Pursuit, get some new questions.
I think
there's a lot to what you said about the choice. I think when we were kids growing up, playing some of these board games like the classic kind of games, Scrabbles and Monopolies, Trivial Pursuits, etc. It seemed there was a relatively limited library of games out there, but there's just so many games out there now covering so many different themes I guess you could say the technology of board games has advanced, just like other technologies out in the world have advanced. So the sort of richness and the intricacy of the board games that you can play and the kind of richness of the worlds that you can interact with are really starting to get to the level where they compete with, video games for that immersiveness and the richness that you can get there. So I think it's just, as you said, a golden and great time to be discovering that whole new games out there. And sorry for cutting you off, Amy. I apologize.
Well, from our perspective, as we are Our Family Plays Games, we believe that board games now is the best time to get into it because it helps you with your family, family communication.
Yes.
You get to bring your kids to the table and get them off the video games.
Claw them off. Claw them off.
So we love the fact that it brings the family to the table. So if you want to communicate with your teenager, this may be something you can do that will get them to open up a little bit more. Because I know with our teenager, he gets into his video games. We don't see him.
We lose him. We lose him.
If you want to get your teenagers to the table, put a board game on there, one that they like.
And like we always say, if you're not having fun at the table, what are you doing? So as a family, it's good to find some great games
to have
and put
fun.
Everybody at the table so you don't have to look at no TV. You're not arguing. Well, you're going to argue probably in the game. You're gonna argue. But if you just put everybody at the table and have that cool cardboard right in front of you, hey, man, can't go wrong. Yeah. Now, you can't go wrong with some of the games, though. But, you can have fun as a family.
Yeah.
You can have fun.
I think
I will say...
Oh, sorry, Amy, go on.
Your family isn't necessarily just your blood relatives. I have met so many amazing people in this hobby, and way younger than me, way older than me, but we can sit down and we can play a game, and there's nothing between us apart from our wits and our skill at the game. And it's brilliant. All the people I've met in this hobby, all these fantastic people, some of which are on the screen in front of me right now, and many of which are out there watching this. Just great people in this hobby.
I think piggybacking off what everyone else has already said, there's so many games out there now that there's something for everyone. If you just want to play party games or you just want to play 4-hour long intense strategy games, there's literally something for everyone in the hobby. You don't have to be playing those heavy strategy games, or you can ignore certain things or you can play all of it. But there's literally so much stuff out there now that there is something for everyone, which I think is great, and everyone there's a place for everyone, and it's such an open community as well.
That's right.
Definitely.
Yeah. To build off of that, I also really appreciate just the diversity of narratives and themes available. So it lets you, I think video games are important in some ways for the immersive capability that they have, and I think board games allow for more a tactile experience. So for players being able to physically touch the pieces, or in most of our cases, being able to sort of physically touch the pieces because we're all playing board games online. I think that having the ability to immerse yourself in different themes via that tactile experience is just very different for me than reading a book, watching TV, playing a video game. And I appreciate there's another great way to experience interesting narratives that are outside of my own,
Definitely.
Well, and to kind of piggyback on that, the diversity of ideas and themes, we haven't got there right then and there in the hobby because we're as African Americans and people of color, we still don't see our stories kind of out there. And that's what I'm still waiting for is the stories of, my culture out there, so that's what I'm still waiting on. And I know it's going to get there because I see a lot of, people of color as designers coming out, and hopefully they can bring our stories, because let me tell you, Black folk, we got a lot of stories and we sure want to tell a whole bunch of them. So that's what I'm encouraged to see, and that's what I want to see.
I think it's
for sure. And
I was just gonna say, I think I definitely agree, there's definitely not enough of that, but as you're saying, there is stuff of that kind of stuff is coming out a bit more. We played Yangsha on the Dicebreaker team played Yangsha, which was a Kickstarter recently, and that was a game that was oh my god, this is incredible, because it took one of my experiences and put it in a game, even though it was a game about Chinese immigrants in San Francisco in the 1920s. There was something that spoke to me as someone, I guess, who I'm half German, half Irish, and I moved when I was young. It there was something in there that spoke to me, and I'm really excited to see more of that as the hobby goes on as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing more African American representation as well, and just hearing all these voices talking.
Yeah, Banana and Center are an incredible team. I love what they've been doing on that RPG.
Yeah.
Like, it's superb.
For sure. And so speaking of, I guess, board games that you are excited to see coming out at the moment, are there games that you've played recently or even in the last 2, 3, 5 years that you've been particularly excited by or kind of engaged by or felt like they really represent, I guess, where the hobby is now and where it's going as well?
Where the hobby is now? Wingspan, probably. I mean, the tactile experience of it, the components are so good. The inclusion of a dice tower is just it makes the table pop out. You've got these little, I don't know, are they ceramic, the eggs? In 5
they were
different colors.
chocolate.
Yeah, they look like chocolate.
They look way too edible.
I was going to say,
Please
how many of them did I eat?
Do not eat them. Do not eat them.
I only ate like 3. It's fine. My doctor says they'll pass.
Yeah,
Well, I know for us,
maybe get some fresh components.
For us, we have so many on our show for shame is ridiculous.
Yeah, but what we played recently. I
mean, just a simple game like for like the family, like Roll For It.
Yeah, Roll For It was really cute.
It's called Casino in the Fitch House at that point when you say Roll For It.
And then that's a really nice game that anybody can learn very quickly.
Yeah.
So I like that it doesn't take a lot to play this game, because some of the games in the hobby, you've got to read a 10-page rule book in order to get it on the table.
Which she don't read. I read all the rules.
So I think
she don't read the rules.
That's something that's great for newcomers to the hobby, that they can get in easily without having to do a lot of work on a game like Roll For It.
Yeah, Roll For It. And like Control, that new game from Panasaurus.
Yeah.
And that's cool,
That's another simple one.
Yeah, it's a little simple. The family can, gather around and try to, on their little cube battlefield, they say.
Yeah.
So but that also shows, the different mechanisms and themes that's coming out in the hobby. Control. You never thought you'd be doing some Legos on a block and that'd be a game. But it turned out pretty cool.
Yes,
so
No, I mean those are great games. I think one thing that's really interesting is that you can probably look at some of the games that you might have played when you were younger, Monopoly or Scrabble or maybe sort of dominoes or something like that, and find some really interesting equivalents in the board gaming world. So if you look at things like Azul, or King Domino, which are really simple games to learn, but they have nice sort of ties back into games that probably more people have been familiar with. And there's a lot of really good lists that people put there. If you just go into YouTube and say, 10 games if you like Monopoly, 10 games if you like, X, Y, or Z, you'll find a lot of really good recommendations for games that maybe have a familiar flavor with something you've experienced, but they've got that kind of modern board gaming technology there where they've refined the concept, added something really interesting, and just made a really fun experience that is actually quite accessible for people who aren't as into board games perhaps as we all are. So so I think that's a really interesting thing to look at, places where you can find those correlations.
Yeah,
one game that we really love is Catan, because if you can see our logo, Catan's in our logo, so we love it.
We love the hexagon tiles.
Yeah, but when people come over that are not really board gamers like all of us, we say, well, let's throw on Ticket to Ride.
Yeah,
man, you can throw Ticket to Ride anyone, just anywhere
anybody
to anyone,
can learn it,
and somebody can play a Ticket to Ride.
Yeah, somebody.
Everywhere they can play a Ticket to Ride.
Yeah, and it's a peaceful game.
Yeah, it's a peaceful game.
Catan is not always peaceful.
None, especially not in this house.
I think you play Ticket to Ride differently to me.
Play right. Y'all don't play right.
So we like,
especially our son Grant. He talking about 3 for 1. I was like, 3 for 1 what? 3 of your cards for 1 of mine. I'm like, what?
Yeah, so we like Ticket to Ride to share with other people because
he's a hustler, y'all. He's a hustler. Woo, Lord. That boy will hurt you. Hey,
that's the extreme board gaming.
This virus is something else. That needs just to come away. I'm getting hurt here.
And Starla, you mentioned kind of teaching rules. I think with a lot of these games, the hurdle for people coming from the likes of Monopoly or Cluedo or wherever it might be is they already know those games, or at least in some cases they think they know the rules, because Monopoly often not the right rules. So in terms of, getting those people to the table and then teaching them and convincing them that this new game is worth the effort, the energy, how do each of you approach that? Putting a box that maybe has like something that's not exciting on the front of it, as modern board games often are. It's like, this game's about tiling or farming, and then being like, but you really need to play it and you will love it.
Well, no, you got to pump it up a little bit. You just don't say, well, this is Carcassonne. This is about the French city that you put tiles. No, you got to pump it up. Say, this is cool here because you can put some tiles down. You can hurt folk. You can put a robber on the board. You can put a knight. Man, look at this. Isn't this so cool? You got to pump up the stuff.
But also, as far as learning rules, if any of you have ever seen our YouTube channel, we have a series within our channel called Beyond Monopoly.
Yeah.
So we talk about all these things that will help people get beyond Monopoly and get into the modern board game hobby. So we do talk about rules. And so I said in the video that you should designate someone to learn the rules.
Yeah,
in our household, it is Mick.
Mick all day long.
Learns the
all
rules.
day long.
I'm not a rules person.
No, she is
and I will
not.
say that over and over. I'm not going to read a 9-page rule book. Give me the synopsis and then put me at the table and let me go. So Mick reads the rules. He's the one we go to if we have any issues.
It's a burden, y'all. It's a burden.
And then he gives us a synopsis, and that's how we play. And so lately, because we've had so many games, he's been trying to get out of reading the rules.
No.
And it is difficult.
No, I haven't.
It's difficult to get people to agree to just read the rules and learn the game. But it's imperative, because if you don't know how to play the game and you're playing it wrong, you don't get the satisfaction and you don't get the fullness of the game that the designer intended. So you have to learn rules, but you need to get someone who's dedicated to doing that and then teaching the rest of it.
Now, I'm dedicated, but I try to get her to watch, like Rodney Smith or somebody like the how-to. This woman will fall asleep in a minute after it comes on. Like, I was like, why are you going to sleep? It's Rodney.
Don't
wake
tell
up.
Rodney that. Don't tell Rodney.
I
feel like you're talking a little bit.
I love Rodney, but rules are important. And if you don't want to read the book, watch the play. This is a great place to go. But yeah, somebody needs to know the rules, because you're going to need someone to go to if you need a question answered, who's going to know that game. I can find the answer for you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amy, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, in my household, I'm definitely a rules learner, but also my day job. I work at a board game cafe as a games guru, so I'm teaching people games constantly, and so many of them, more or less, as professional as you get in the industry. Most of those people only play Cluedo and Monopoly, but if you give them something like Century Spice Road, it's a rule book that's like the size of my hand, double-sided. They can learn that within 2 minutes. It's not scary, and that's the big thing with modern board games. People want to show off Twilight Imperium. Yeah, that's terrifying. If you don't know what you're coming from, that is a terrifying game.
Exactly.
You see Gloomhaven, and it's a box this big. I'm off camera, but massive box.
That's how big it is.
6 kilos.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
You don't show those people those games. You show them Santorini. You can teach them that in 2 minutes.
So
you show them the mind.
Yeah.
You can teach them that in 2 minutes. They might hate it, but if so, they've wasted 2 minutes. And if they don't, then they've played something that's unlike anything they've ever played. And that's how you get them hooked.
That's my favorite.
I think
That's the gateway. The gateway game.
Yeah.
So you always have those.
And there's nothing wrong with the word gateway games. It's all good. It's all good.
Yes.
Amy, I think you bring up an interesting point, though, where it's I think that there's a tension once someone's taught you the rules between saying like, oh, this game doesn't sound like it would be a good fit for me, and oh, well, sunk cost, we've already learned the rules, we might as well play the game. And I think that's something that I encourage a lot in my groups is, if this game doesn't sound like you're going to enjoy it, that's fine. I'd rather get through 15 minutes or 5 minutes of just going through the rules than 30 minutes of you playing a game that you hated. And that's something that I don't think comes up a lot until you're playing a lot more board games. Just the idea of, oh, just from learning the rules of this game, I'm like, oh, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
True.
I think another thing that I would say is maybe a little bit of a different perspective, but I think also, a lot of people are quite intelligent. They understand the concepts of games, if they play video games or things like that. So I wouldn't discourage people from exploring, games that they like the look of themselves. And, if you go through the rules, their instructions, like any kind of instructions, you can kind of figure them out. You don't have to be superhuman to do that. I mean, I think for people like us who've played a lot of different board games, we've already learned some kind of concept, so maybe it's a bit quicker for us. But you can sit down and break out a game that you like the look of if you're a group of people who are very new to board games, and just make your way through it, see how you get on. I think for the most part, especially with the different resources out there that people have mentioned, there's a lot of videos online, a lot of how-tos, a lot of explainers. You can probably figure it out. So I would say, don't. I think some of those lighter games or gateway games are great, but also if you like the look of Blood Rage or Scythe or something like that, and you want to play it, go for it. I think you can probably figure it out.
And just kind of accept that a lot of the time your first game is going to be a wash rules-wise anyways. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I have a pretty bad track record of getting the game right on the first play.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you still have fun, you're doing it right. That's true.
Oh, yeah, no. About halfway through
There you
Century,
go,
Spice Road,
Amy.
the rails
As
right
long
there,
as you have fun, that's it, right there. As long as you have fun.
It's funny because we were discussing something similar on the Dicebreaker team this week, actually, where I'd been writing up a script for how to play for a game, and one of my colleagues checked over the script, and his notes on the script were a lot of like, wait, what? You can do this? And it's like a very well-known game that everyone knows the rules to, but all of a sudden everyone was like, wait, hold on, we didn't know this rule, or we didn't remember that rule, because I guess you play it once and you're like, okay, I get it now, and you don't really look at the rules after that, so you may drop a rule or two here along the way, and if that keeps happening, all of a sudden you're playing a very different game.
Yes.
So it's funny how that can happen as well.
I played Ice Cool. Like, it's just the penguin flicking game, right? I played that wrong 50 times. Like, we found out maybe like 50 plays in that it was completely different starting setup than the way we had done it the first game and just never looked at the rules again.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, it's how it goes sometimes. Yeah. We're playing it right now.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's several games that you look at something on YouTube or you see somebody talking about it and like, oh, I didn't know that rule was in the game, and that's 100 games later, you're like, oh, we didn't do that right.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of times that happens.
Everyone.
But as long as you have fun, it's all good. It's all good.
I think that's one of the nice things about board games versus something like video games, which can have mods and expansions and whatnot. But board games, you can have different variants, different rule sets. Some of them come with the game. Some of them can be house ruled. It can go both ways, because Monopoly is notorious for people playing it wrong. It's not a good game generally anyway, but it's a lot better by the rules as written. But so many people play their own variant of it that it becomes like interminably long. But there are so many things where it's like, if you don't like something, you can take it out, and maybe it's not the way the designer aimed for you to play it, but if you're enjoying it, if it's working for your group, then ultimately why not do it?
There is definitely an undercurrent in a lot of cooperative games I play about just like, it's a cooperative game. You can cheat a little bit if you want to. Like, we're on the same team. And that happens occasionally.
Or takesy backsies and things like that.
That don't happen in this house because somebody don't play co-op in this household. We don't have co-op here.
Well, whoever it is, I'm with you. I'm not a big co-op fan myself.
You got a fan?
I love them.
Alex mentioned a few minutes ago that there's so many games out there. You don't have to like everything or play everything.
Yeah.
I think
there's probably people watching this who they don't even know that co-ops exist. The idea of a cooperative board game is actually relatively modern.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they're huge. Like, Pandemic is obviously a huge one, but it's not the only one. And you've got the whole subgenre of escape room games, which, it's not a building you go in and get locked in. It's a deck of cards with puzzles on, like The Room, but it's a board game.
Right. The trauma there is that you have to cut them with scissors.
I think co-ops are a really interesting board game concept if you're not as into modern board games, because I think a lot of us had memories growing up, at least I did, of like those miserable kind of games you'd play with your family where you'd lose and your parents would win or your siblings would win, and you get really upset by it. But then that may have actually turned you off of board games. But then you figure out there's this cooperative version of board games where you can all win together. And I remember when I first played Pandemic, it just blew my mind. I was like, wow, so we actually are all on the same team. We don't have to have that kind of competitive element here, and we can all win together. And it's just it's part of that evolution of board games as a sort of a technology, as sort of an area, a creative area, that they've evolved, and these really new, interesting ideas and concepts now exist in board gaming.
I think the kind of springing off of pandemic, the other one that I think quite a few people maybe not watching this won't know of is legacy games, or at least narrative board games, because a lot of people think of board games as you play for points, and a lot of board games are that. They're the you add up at the end, whoever's got the bigger number wins. But there are so many games out there now that are like Amy mentioned Gloomhaven earlier, which is essentially like an RPG in a box, along with more cards for the combat and so on. But they're trying to offer that. Yes, a very, very big box. They're trying to offer that kind of more story-driven experience. Some of them are competitive as well, but that you can have as a group and kind of go through like you would watch a show together or play a video game campaign together. And I think people put off by the idea of competitiveness, like Kareem was saying. Like there's so much out there now, you know, within co-ops as well, that just if you haven't looked at things with narratives or things that are co-op, you know, you might be really surprised by just how far board games have come, even in 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
It helps a lot
But it
that
was
we're also
really
getting
cool.
some influences from the tabletop RPG community as well, right? So like the Dungeons and Dragons, the A Quiet Year, Jiangxi, like a lot of ideas from those creators are also filtering back into board games and giving us games like Legacy of Dragonholt, which is almost purely cooperative, purely narrative driven, and some very light card play, and other stuff in that space. I think is a really nice way to give people sort of a spectrum of participation where, you know, if you want to play something that's a lot more like reading text, going through, talking through the outcomes, there's a lot more storytelling games in that space, up and to include things like Fiasco. Or if you want to play like, you know, something that's very much just I am a train. I think I haven't played any 18xx games. Are you the train?
Oh, I thought that was Ticket to Ride.
I mean that too. I'm just trying to think of like I think that's how they go. Somewhere someone's about to send me a very nasty email. But I'm a train. I buy stocks. I lay my rail, and then I earn some points or whatever. I'm very unfamiliar with this genre, but there's a spectrum. Is what I'm trying to say.
I think you're generally a train company rather than just a single locomotive.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think Eric probably knows that, but you know, it's really interesting, Matt, just going back to that point, because Pandemic was one of the first games that I played when I first got into, you know, board games, and I quickly, you know, went into playing Pandemic Legacy, and it's probably still to this day one of my best board gaming experiences. And I played it with some close friends, family, who aren't really into board games at all. But when we looked at this sort of game that was kind of simple, you know, when you could kind of be part of this narrative. It's sort of like being, instead of watching a TV show together, you can kind of be part of the story and you influence this and discover it together. And it's just a great storytelling experience. And as humans, we love stories and we love being sort of part of that and sharing that. So if you want to just have a gaming experience, but you're also, you know, enjoying the story together, discovering, you know, episode by episode what's happening, legacy games like that can really be an amazing experience. And they're totally different to what we may have been used to playing as kids as well. So I think it's a really, you know, important point to bring up around legacy and narrative-driven games in general.
And I think what the cool thing that, you know, Isaac Childress did, he saw that a lot of people, we talk about, you know, how big Gloomhaven is and how intimidating it is. And I think the great thing he did, he said, okay, I know it's huge, I know it's big, so let me give you a taste of it. And he came with, you know, Jaws of the Lion, which was just, you know, it's brilliant because 25 scenarios, it basically walks you through 5 of them. And I mean, it was great. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, man, so this was Gloomhaven? I'm like, well, yeah, you know, but, you know, play this and then get ready for the big boy. But I'm just so glad he gave, you know, a little taste of, you know, that a lot of people came in and said, this is great. So I think that was really cool. He gave you a little small version of it.
Yeah, that's very smart.
I will say that at least from my family's old copies of Clue and Monopoly, and given how much we overreacted to board games as younger kids, they're basically legacy games. I think we've torn up several of those cards.
Every time you answer a question, you can never answer it again. Well, I guess that's how they think it will work, but you go back.
It's very much like the Monopoly idea of like, if I can't have Ventnor Avenue, nobody can have Ventnor Avenue.
Melting it in the microwave.
That card's gone. I don't even know what happened to it.
We didn't get that deep on there. We didn't get that deep.
Very scorched earth.
You were ahead of your time there.
That's a little bit deep there.
So we've spoken about some of kind of the best board games out there and what's pushing the genre forward. But I guess leaping back, you know, for people like we say that have played Cluedo, Monopoly, you know, are there some modern successors or direct kind of things where you could look at something and go, okay, so you've played a lot of Monopoly, maybe you think it's okay, you at least know how to play it. What's the next step towards, you know, what's the next step between Monopoly and Gloomhaven at the very far end of the kind of ladder?
Oh, I have a good one for this one. So I grew up playing a lot of Clue, and my favorite thing about Clue was like the deduction element, right? So you're trying to figure out what cards your opponents have, and from there try to reason out what cards aren't available, so you can figure out who the murderer was in this Clue style house. Renegade and Foxtrot pushed out the Search for Planet X, and it's a little bit weird in your brain to go from a like house murder mystery to like a space like astronomy adventure, but they do have similar elements in that deduction space, right? So you all play as astronomers who are looking for the mysterious planet X, which is a planet that will not show up on your star charts, but other things like comets or asteroids will show up following some rules. And so similar to Clue, what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what everyone else knows and figure out how that translates to the board itself, and from there figure out which spot is missing or which is the like obvious missing piece. And if you can find that, you can often discover Planet X. The game is supported by an app which allows the board to change state every few games, so you're not always playing on the same board. But I find that it really captures the same level of like deduction that I liked about Clue, without all of the weird stuff about some of the weird rules interactions about like the racing or the dice or the secret passageways or the like whatever a lead pipe is. I think we had an old version, but either way, yeah, I just have really enjoyed that one.
I've got a couple of good ones. So if you remember Masterminds, that old one where you had 4 colors hidden behind a bar and the other person's got to work out what you've got. There's a modern version of that. It's called Rising 5. There is an app that randomizes the colors of these 4 symbols. And you've got to work it out, just like Mastermind, and the app will tell you, oh, you got one of them right and one of them right in the wrong place. But before you're allowed to do that, you have to adventure on this planet with these space explorers, playing cards, defeating monsters to create enough energy to run your machine that's going to deduce this mastermind. So it's taken a very classic game mechanic and then it's put a whole other game on top of it to bring it into the modern world. It's absolutely fantastic. From a more traditional game sense, chess has been somewhat re-implemented by Onitama.
Really good suggestion.
You've got 5 moves a game, and every time you use a move, you give it over to your opponent. So you know what they're able to do. You can always think ahead, but because you've got 2 moves, you're only giving one of them over, and there's one in the middle at any one time, you really have to plan out and keep on your toes. You can't learn the gambits like you can in chess. So someone who's been playing Onitama for 30 years, I mean, A, it hasn't been out 30 years, so time traveler, be warned. But 2, they're not necessarily going to be better than you. If you can think logically, you can beat them. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great game, and it's it's one I've introduced to family and friends myself who sort of are familiar with chess and really enjoy picking up. I would say if you look at Monopoly as a game, I think what I always enjoyed as a kid was kind of this notion of like building up your, let's say, assets or your portfolio of wealth, and it's sort of kind of an economic game in a sort of a loose sense. You're sort of trying to increase your wealth and increase your and I think actually if you enjoy Monopoly, you're really spoiled because there's a huge number of games out there called Euro games or resource management games or economic games where you will find that sort of same flavor, and there's probably too many for me to even mention. Interestingly enough, the trigger for me that got me into modern board games was I was thinking about playing Monopoly with the family at Christmas time one year, and I was like, surely by now somebody's come up with a better version of Monopoly, and I was looking for hacked versions of Monopoly, how people hacked it or whatever, and I ended up on Board Game Geek, which is kind of like the cross between Wikipedia and the Internet Movie Database or Rotten Tomatoes for board games, and it's a fantastic website. I think you will come across it at some stage if you're looking at modern board games. But through that, I discovered there was a huge number of these games that had that sort of flavor of building up your resources, building up your wealth, and kind of building an engine in a sense in a game to try and beat out your opponents and the people you're playing with. So there's no one that really kind of comes to mind, but there's just a really wide range of games that can fit that. And I think even if you go to Board Game Geek and look at Monopoly, you'll see recommendations there of other games that people who like Monopoly actually play. So it's kind of like a recommendation engine built for you, right, to give you suggestions.
Yeah, one of our favorite modern takes on a game, a classic game, is Five Tribes. Five Tribes utilizes the Mancala mechanic. So if you've ever played the original Mancala game, you'll be able to play Five Tribes very easily. We love Five Tribes.
Oh, yes, we do.
I've actually tried to learn the classic Mancala game, not successfully, but Five Tribes, I love it. It's one of our favorites. So anyone who's played something like that with the stones and moving it around, you're going to love being able to do that same thing with the meeples and Five Tribes. So I love that.
Yeah.
It's worth saying there as well, like Kareem, you mentioned King Domino earlier. Starla, you just mentioned that it's kind of, Five Tribes is built on Mancala. There is definitely an element of, there are a lot of games where you can take those gameplay aspects and go, okay, I know this little part of this, and this adds another sentence of rules or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's also, I think a lot of people coming to board games today will be surprised by licensed games as well, which seem to be booming at the moment and are generally like much better than they were in the past. So like Star Wars Escape from Death Star released around the time of original Star Wars, kind of crap, but
whoa. I will not tolerate this slight against Pokemon. Sorry.
But you look at something like, Star Wars Imperial Assault, which is like a dungeon crawler where you're exploring tiles as characters, or Star Wars Rebellion, where you're playing the original trilogy.
Rodney's big into that one, I think, right?
I don't know, but I know
very little about it,
so I wouldn't be surprised. But that's, there are, even if you're looking for something specific where you're like, I really like this world or this universe, there's probably something out there. So
there's been like 2 Back to the Future board games released this year, I think, right? And there's been Jaws, and there's been Jurassic Park games, and if you don't like Jurassic Park, you can have Dinosaur Island, and Dinosaur World, I think it's coming. So I think there's a lot of cool themes out there. If you like movies or series or TV that's related to these kind of things, you can find things that will tickle your fancy around those.
Yeah, you generally
see
you can throw a rock and you'll hit a Marvel game, just throw a rock and, I hit something. So just Marvel Champions and was that Marvel's United?
Marvel
Splendor that's coming out, Marvel Love Letter, if you like Marvel, you'll find something.
Is there Marvel's
Ravensburger and
Codenames?
There is. There's Marvel code names. Yeah. There's even a Blizzard code names they made just for like Blizzard employees. Yeah, but Ravensburger and the Op have done a lot of really good work, bringing on a lot of titles. So Ravensburger is pretty famous, especially now, for the Villainous series. So for a lot of people who are Disney fans and want to like explore what being a Disney villain is like, they have Villainous, which lets you play as Cruella de Vil, Scar, the guy from The Great Mouse Detective, there's also some Maleficent. I was like, did I just pick 3? No, Scar's not obscure, but Marvel Villainous as well just came out.
Yep.
There's a lot of really good licensed games. I've been very pleased with them. I think IDW does a fair number as well, but they have mostly comic book licenses, so you'll see a lot more like The Legend of Korra, Pro Bending Arena, or a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games from them.
I think I've been so scared of playing licensed games for so long, because for a long time it has just been a matter of label slapping. But I completely agree. Like, a lot of the stuff that's come out like recently, or like kind of in recent years, has definitely improved in quality, and it feels like they're making a game with the license in mind, rather than just, I have this game, how can we sell it? Let's stick Marvel on it. Okay, good. Now it'll sell.
Well, they gotta compete in a landscape with a lot of other really good board games out right now, right? Yeah. So people talk, but like, I don't know. When I was growing up, there were still like some good licensed video games, like Spider-Man 2 for the GameCube, or GoldenEye, or even Aladdin. I like Aladdin. I know that's not a very popular opinion, but I think there's always been some good ones. I'm just very excited that the pipeline of high quality licensed titles seems to be expanding as they're trying to compete with other already great board games.
Back in the day, I'm gonna age myself, but we older than all of y'all. Yes. First off, we older than all of y'all. But hey, we are.
I just had a birthday.
These children.
Yes, yeah,
but back in the 80s, which I was growing up, there was a game called King Kong that was coming out with the movie King Kong, and that was a pretty cool little game. And I said, "Dang, that's pretty cool." So that was one IP from way back. That was pretty cool. So, they have hit it, some have hit pretty good, some have hit pretty bad. But I definitely agree that there's IPs out there that's pretty good. I mean, just one that it's a really cool pick up and deliver, and that is Firefly. It was based on a IP that a great series, sci-fi series, kind of a sci-fi Western, show that only lasted one season, and I can't understand why they didn't bring that back. But Firefly, the game, it's pretty dang good. So yeah, there's some good IPs out there.
Yeah, there's also Funkoverse and Unmatched. So if you're into more skirmishy combat games, I think Funkoverse is probably a little bit more casual fare in terms of my experiences. I find that goes well with a lot of audiences that are getting into board games, and then people who are looking for more probably the next step after that have really enjoyed Unmatched. And they both feature a fair number of IP titles, right? So Unmatched has Bruce Lee or Jurassic Park. So I guess Bruce Lee could fight a dinosaur. And Funkoverse has the Golden Girls and the Kool-Aid Man, which is probably my dream team anyways. So
yeah, fighting Rick and Morty and Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'd probably still put money on the Golden Girls there.
Yeah.
They're great friends. So.
I think... Well, I mean, you might not agree with me, but I think one of the things that's been interesting with all these licensed games as well is that along with the licensed games, you're also seeing games that are, not as well known as Monopoly. So along the lines of something like Codenames, that's kind of a recent smash hit. We're seeing them appear kind of on major retail shelves, not just in smaller hobby stores that fans who are already in the hobby go to, but kind of branching out into shops that everyone's visiting essentially. So when it comes to finding games or people looking for that first step into the rest of the hobby, where would you recommend they kind of check out and go from there afterwards?
I'm very much...
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think obviously most people will probably go to something like Amazon first, but I would always say try and look local. If you've got a the thing is, board game cafes and board game shops are everywhere now, so it's very likely that you'll have one of those probably near where you live, or if you're going into the city near you. I don't know. I would always push people towards that, because then you can also talk to someone who most definitely knows what they're talking about, and they can ask you, what do you already like, or what, they can talk to you and try and actually sell you a game that you will enjoy, rather than you trying to make your way through Amazon and try and figure your way out of, there's a lot of, the word crap has been used, so I'm going to use that again. There's a lot of crap on there that and if you don't know what is specifically what you're looking for, you might end up buying something like that, and then you might be put off by board games because maybe you bought something that was not great. Whereas as I said, if you can go and talk to someone directly in a shop or in a cafe who can recommend something based on your likes and interests, I think that's always my recommendation for people, first and foremost.
Yeah, to follow on that,
and
I think
we always say
once you've gotten a good sense of a couple games that you like, you can often find a reviewer or someone online who has basically a similar through line to titles they enjoy as you. So I know I have a few friends that are just getting into it, and they have sort of a hodgepodge of video reviewers, written reviewers, and podcasts who like similar games to them, and they try to look to see what those people are playing and whether or not they like it, because that gives a good barometer for whether or not they would like it as well. And even I have that, right? I have similar friends who are working on reviews and other stuff in the space, and I'll ask them what are you trying, what's good, like what should I check out, and that's sort of how I navigate through the deluge of recent releases.
And you know what we always say, on our channel, because we talk to families that probably haven't been in it, in this hobby, and especially people of color that really have, kind of like, well, I don't see anybody that really plays this game like me. I don't really see, folk that really look like me out there. And we try to tell them, have an open mind and do your research.
Yes.
And one thing we encourage all game stores to do, be cool. When you see somebody that come in there that don't know what the world they looking at, be cool. Because when you go into it, that's the best place to go is a game shop, to have somebody talk to you. And while you standing there looking at some games, like, where am I going to go? Somebody comes and say, hey, how can I help you? What do you need? What kind of game? The game cafe, great things. We have one here in Omaha called Spellbound. Nice people. We love them. And when people go in there and say, I don't know what I'm doing here, but I just think I want to have some fun, they help. And that's the one thing, just help folk out. And people that's just getting in this, don't be scared, because you can play anything, because there's something out there to play.
Well, I think that if you are lucky enough to have a board game cafe near you, that would probably be your first stop, because you can try it before you buy it.
Exactly.
And that way you will know that you're going to like it. Because we always say, do the research, go online, look at reviewers or other YouTube channel people that talk about games, check out the Dice Tower, check out BGG. But if you really want to know the game, try to get to some place where you can try it before you buy it, because we tell people these games are not cheap.
No.
This is not a cheap hobby. I mean, you're dropping $40, $60, $80 a box, and you want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely. So we don't tell people to just go out there and just buy stuff willy-nilly. Research.
Because if I could only be like the minimalist down there, I would be so happy. And I know Starla would be too. But it is so hard to just limit myself to 30 games.
30
it's
or 40
so
games.
hard. I admire you, man. I admire you so much.
Do you really?
No, not really. I don't really admire
Because
him. I don't admire him at all.
You just like this.
Yes, I do. I do. I have to. I have a problem. I have a problem.
Let's just go back.
I have admitted that. I have a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the first step.
We have a problem.
Yeah, we have a problem. Yeah.
It's not the worst problem to have, but
no, it's not. No, it's
well, I don't know.
Well, see,
it's a costly problem. It's a very costly problem. But back to the question at hand. Do your research. If you can get to a board game cafe or find a gaming meetup. I know during this time it's kind of difficult to get a meetup, but before all this stuff happened with COVID, go to a meetup, try games, because I know I found some of my favorite games at gaming meetups and gaming cons.
Yes. Yeah. And another thing, I know a lot of people, like here in the U.S., you got Target, and I just went into a store called Walmart, not too far from us, called Walmart. Yes,
Okay.
a lot of people don't know Walmart.
Everybody knows Walmart.
Yeah, everybody knows Walmart. Yeah, that's true. But I went to Walmart the other day. I said, "Oh my Lord, they had so many hobby games in there." I said, "Lord," and some people might just say, "What are these things?" And okay, there's a game called Titanic, but is it any good?
Yeah.
That's when you got to do your research.
Yeah.
Don't just buy Titanic and you don't know what it is. Use your phone. Use your phone and say, okay, go to YouTube, hit Titanic.
Go to
How do you play?
BGG.
Go to BGG. See what's up. Just don't look up there. So that's a pretty cover. No. That might get you, in a bad spot.
Game,
just research.
Yeah.
Have an open mind. Look and see what's going on, because there's a lot of resources out there, that can really help you find the right game.
Yes.
I think a lot of folks might be tempted by Kickstarter as well, which seems to be bigger than ever for board games. Kind of in the opening, it's making tens of millions, and individual games are making millions at some point. And it's, those games can often be, $100, $200, even more sometimes. So what are kind of your thoughts on Kickstarter? Because it also tends to be that there are quite a few games now that don't come to stores ever. They are just on Kickstarter. And so, if you're not in on the ground floor, you kind of miss out. But obviously you don't get the opportunity to play them a lot of the time.
Yeah, but
stay away from it. It's the devil. Stay away. It's the devil. Stay away. It is the devil. It has caught me too many times. Stay away.
If you're new to gaming, I would almost certainly stay the heck away from Kickstarter. You might
Stay away from
get
it.
the next smash hit, but you need to know what you're looking at. You need to be able to translate their marketing into what you're actually going to get hold of.
Yeah.
Now, you can do your research. A lot of them have print and plays or a tabletop simulator or Tabletopia, which lets you play the game online, which, by the way, 2020 being what it is, great way to actually play games at the moment and play games you might not have physical access to. But yeah, Kickstarter's a scary place. And you can spend a lot of money on things you ain't going to see for 9 months, 18 months. It's not a
3 years?
pre-order system. A lot of board game companies use it as one, but it ain't.
I think this kind of goes back around as well, looking at board game reviewers, YouTubers, all that stuff, because a lot of them will get their hands on Kickstarter games before, or like these prototypes of the game around the time when the game goes up on Kickstarter, hopefully, if the whoever's making the game has done their job right, and so you'll be able to see their thoughts. And again, if you're following or watching somebody with who you usually agree on your game choices, I don't know, and they've played the game, or at least a prototype, a fairly good prototype of the game, and they tell you, from what I've played, it's legit. That's probably safe-ish. But again, also, like, a prototype is not a finished product and things can change, so it's never 100%, but that's another way that you can do some research for Kickstarter stuff, for sure.
Yeah, and
I
there's a
didn't
lot
mean
of
to
time.
suggest they're all bad.
Yeah.
Just, there are so many good games out there, which are out now. And if you are new to games, look at those first. There's no reason you have to play the latest thing.
That's
Play the
right.
That's right.
classics.
Don't chase the
They're
hotness.
brilliant.
Don't chase the hotness. Yeah.
It's true, though I will say that Kickstarter is often a place where hobby designers and hobby publishers who don't necessarily see as much large scale like press around their games can go to get their games made. It's not always big publishers using it as a pre-order system. There are a lot of small scale publishers doing single print runs of games that end up being pretty great. I mean, a few of my favorite games are Kickstarter only titles that then the publisher maybe released to their web shop. So the Shipwreck Arcana is a beautiful small box game, cooperative, a little bit of deduction, just an absolutely just gorgeous game. I actually bought it on Kickstarter purely because I saw the art and I was taken by the art, and a friend said, yeah, it's pretty good. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever Jeremy says, I guess. And then just, I've made worse decisions for $15, I can say, looking at my Sonic the Hedgehog ticket stub. But, or I got Soul Last Days of a Star from Elephant Laboratories on Kickstarter. It's a very meditative game about trying to draw energy from the sun before it explodes so that you can get out of the solar system. It's something that I don't think would necessarily get published through standard publishing channels, and I'm really glad they were given the opportunity to make such a thing. But I will agree that there's a lot of sensory overload that can come from something like Kickstarter, and so I tend to, if I'm shopping on Kickstarter, either get games from publishers I already know and trust, games that I really, really like the art of, to the point where I'm like, even if I don't enjoy the game, having the game as like an art piece in the house is something that I'm really excited about. Or a game with a publisher or a design team that are often from a background that I don't see a lot in publishing, so that I can put my money towards helping new voices in the industry find footholds and build something that they're really excited about.
We're coming up on time.
That's for a person that's been in gaming, but someone who's just new. I mean, you're rolling the dice with Kickstarter a lot. So just like what Amy said, there's a lot of games that's on the shelf right now that you can go to, and you can find something good. Because if you put somebody out there and they say, "Oh, Tainted Grail, I like that. That's pretty cool," and they pay all that money for a Simon game for $500, and they get it home and they pissed off, that's not good. That's not helping. That's not helping the hobby. Yeah. So that's like a roll of the dice.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying go blow all your money on Kickstarter. More just like offering another perspective.
Sonic movie?
Huh? No, I actually, It's a terrible movie, but I loved it. I loved it, and I'm gonna watch it again.
I have a 15-year-old to be very hurt.
Very hurt. Very upset with you.
It is.
He loved that movie. We watched it too many times.
It is such a bad movie, and I love it. Like
God,
I'm all over the place.
No, don't say it.
I just caught that and I thought I'd bring it up.
It was the highlight of my movie watching experience this year. I got like 20 friends. We all went to the theater to go see it. Just,
Alex has Sonic color hair. My son would love it.
I know, it's funny because nobody said it until like yesterday, and now everyone's saying it all of a sudden. I've had this hair color for 2 weeks.
We love it. I digress. I cannot do that. So
yes,
we digress. We'll go back to board gaming. But
we digress.
I caught that Sonic thing. And I was talking about it.
Digression's normally very welcome, but unfortunately we're coming up on time. But I'd like to swing round once more around the panel to ask if someone is coming to the hobby. We've had a lot of recommendations so far during this panel, but if someone's coming to the hobby, let's say they've played Catan, Pandemic, Monopoly, but they haven't played anything from the last 5 years. If you could put one game in front of them, what would it be?
Quacks of Quedlinburg.
Yeah, good pick.
Love that game. It's one of those games I've rarely met anyone who doesn't like it, and it's silly, it's fun, it's fairly simple to get into. There's a lot of variety. What's that?
Is that Catch the Moon?
Yeah, Catch the Moon. Love this game. It's a ladder stacking game where you're just trying to build a place, put a bunch of ladders to reach the moon. It's always a blast for us. Just the weird ways the ladders like intersect and hang. Absolute blast.
Well, for us, I would say Chai. If you can find it, that's a beautiful, calming game.
It's easy to learn, and it's I think people that are new would love that.
Chai. It's really, really cool. I think that would really fit in with the family. You know, just saying, oh, it's pretty.
With anybody.
It's easy.
It's a nice
but we're talking about family, though.
No, we're talking about anybody.
We're talking about family, though.
Yeah, Chai.
Okay, Chai.
I'm going to throw out a suggestion of number 9. Lovely little game. Everyone gets the same Tetris-style number tiles in the same order. So it's all about how you use them, and you're stacking them up to make a pyramid of sorts. You want to get as high as possible, but you can't leave gaps underneath, so you've got to build it really efficiently. It's all about rotating the tiles. Really easy to learn. You can learn it in 2 minutes and be playing. It's only a short game, but it's great fun.
Oh, it's super.
I would probably say Azul. So it's a kind of more of a abstract style game, very simple, very tactile. It's got these great sort of tiles that you can play with, and it has a lot of strategy in it. It's more of a classical sort of feel kind of game. It's really fun, really pretty to look at, really tactile, and you can play it with different numbers of people, and different people with different backgrounds and experiences in board games. So that would probably be one I would recommend. But I love Quacks as well. It's fantastic.
Quacks. We love Quacks. Love Quacks.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that is obviously there have been so many recommendations during this panel, but hopefully that's somewhere to start if you are new to board games, and there are plenty more out there for you to discover, including on some of our panelists' own YouTube channels and websites and social feeds. So once more, if we swing around, just if we could let people know where to find you so that they can keep, discovering this hobby of ours.
Okay, well, we're Our Family Plays Games. You can find us on Facebook at Our Family Plays Games, Twitter, _plays, Instagram, Our Family Plays Games. Don't forget to catch us on YouTube and the Dice Tower.
Yep, Board Game Breakfast.
And Amy?
Everyone's being too polite. I'm Amy. Together with my wife, we write The Game Shelf, which is a written blog giving out reviews on board games. You can also find us... Sorry, I didn't even say where you can find us. thegameshelf.blogspot.com. I can't even speak either. You can also find us at game_shelf on Twitter.
Fantastic. And Kareem?
So the best place to find me is on Twitter. My handle there is @GameMinimalist. And I do have posts and reviews in different places, but the best thing is just come to Twitter and you'll find some links there, or you can just ask me directly, about anything or any games that I've played. And
Eric?
So you can find me at what'sericplaying.com. On Instagram, I'm what'sericplaying, and on Twitter, again, due to a naming thing, I'm What's E playing.
That works
thank
really
you
well
also-
in England, to be fair, because it's like, what's he playing?
It was originally going to be What's Eric playing with like a no G, and I realized
Right.
I was not cool enough to pull that off. I would need to buy a skateboard or something.
There's always time.
Yeah, I know.
It is always fun. But thank you all so much again for your time, for joining us today, and for your recommendations and discussion. If you're looking for more from myself and Alex Lolies and the rest of the Dicebreaker team, you can find us on dicebreaker.com or youtube.com/Dicebreaker. But until we see you again, we hope you stay safe out there. Thank you for watching. Go and check out these fantastic content creators and board games and just a hobby, because it really is an amazing hobby if you're just dipping your toes for the moment. But for today, that is all we have time for. So thank you again, Mick and Starla, Amy, Kareem, Eric, Lolies, and have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye.